Do you know that feeling, that overwhelming sense of having 1,000 thoughts swirling around at once? Like your mind is a phone with 50 browser tabs open, all vying for your attention. There's a moment, a specific moment, when Eckhart Tolle discovered something that changed everything. And no, it wasn't during years of secluded meditation. It wasn't on some remote mountaintop retreat. It was on an ordinary night, in an ordinary city, when his own mind nearly broke him. But what he discovered that night, what almost no one tells you, is that you can access this same breakthrough in just 5 minutes. It doesn't matter if you've never meditated in your life. It doesn't matter if your mind feels like a hurricane right now, because here's the truth that's going to shock you. You don't need to stop your thoughts. You need something far simpler and far more powerful. Do you know the difference between a thunderstorm and a hurricane? In a hurricane, there's an eye, a place of absolute stillness, and that eye, it's always been there. Even in the midst of the most intense chaos, your mind is exactly like that right now, a hurricane, but there's an eye, and Tolle discovered the doorway. Imagine for a second that you could ask your own mind a question it's never been able to answer, a question that leaves it so bewildered that it simply stops for a few seconds, and in those seconds, silence. But before I reveal that question, you need to understand what really happened to Eckhart Tolle that night, because what he experienced might be happening to you right now, and you don't even realize it. It was just another night in London. Tolle was in bed, but he couldn't sleep. His mind was at war with itself, thoughts about the past, worries about the future, criticisms of the present, an endless loop of mental suffering. And then, at the height of his despair, something strange happened. He heard himself think, I can't live with myself anymore. And then, a pause. A question arose spontaneously. Who is the I that can't live with myself? In that instant, something shattered, as if time had stopped, as if reality had split into two layers, the layer of thoughts, and the layer that observes the thoughts. And for the first time in his life, he realized, I am not my thoughts. Imagine the feeling. It's like discovering you've spent your entire life in a prison without knowing the door was never locked. Like realizing you were watching a horror movie and suddenly remembering you can turn off the television. In that moment, Tolle didn't just understand this intellectually. He felt it in his bones, in his soul, in the cells of his body. It was as if an invisible veil had been lifted from his eyes, as if he'd been asleep his entire life, and finally awakened. But here's what's fascinating and disturbing. Tolle spent the next 2 years in a state of almost constant ecstasy, sitting on park benches, observing the world with the eyes of a child, completely present, completely at peace. People around him thought he'd gone mad. But he had discovered something humanity spends its entire life searching for, the mind's off switch, and you can flip it in 5 minutes. Because I'm going to teach you exactly what Tolle discovered, but in a way you can do right now, sitting where you are, without becoming a monk, without abandoning your life. First, you need to understand one thing. Your mind isn't your enemy. It's trying to protect you. But it's using strategies from a time when we needed to outrun saber-toothed tigers, and now it's trying to protect you from emails, difficult conversations, thoughts about the future. There's a term in neuroscience for this, negativity bias. Your brain is programmed to focus 5 times more on what could go wrong than on what could go right. It was a matter of survival 50,000 years ago. Today, it's a recipe for chronic anxiety. But there's more. Your brain produces between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. And here's the shocker. 95% of them are exactly the same as yesterday's, and 80% are negative. It's like having a scratched record playing the same sad song forever. This isn't a defect in its design. Your mind was built to be a problem detective, to find what's wrong, to prepare for the worst, to create catastrophe scenarios because a paranoid ancestor survived. A relaxed ancestor became dinner. Except now you don't need to survive on the African savannah anymore. You need to survive Monday morning traffic, boring meetings, complicated relationships, and your mind keeps using the same 50,000-year-old software. It's like having a state-of-the-art security system in a house with no burglars. The alarm goes off all the time, for no reason, and you've forgotten where the off switch is. Tolle found that switch, and it has a very simple name: Presence. Choice, but it's not the presence you think it is. It's not, let's focus on the present moment. Everyone says that, and everyone fails. Because when you try to focus on the present, who's trying? The mind. The same mind you're trying to calm. It's like trying to lift yourself up by your own hair, physically impossible. Real presence is different. It's when you stop trying to control your thoughts and simply observe them, as if you were the sky, and the thoughts were clouds passing by. The sky never fights the cloud, it just lets them pass. And you can discover this now, this very moment, with a 5-minute exercise, the same exercise Tolle refined over decades, but simplified, to work in the real world and for real people, with real problems. But before we begin, I need to warn you about something. Something Tolle discovered that might frighten you. The more you practice this exercise, the more you realize that most of your problems didn't exist. They were ghosts created by the mind, projections, fears about things that never happened, regrets about things that can't be changed, worries about futures that probably will never exist. And when these ghosts dissolve, you find yourself face to face with reality. And reality almost always is far simpler than your thoughts made it seem. But this can be scary, because it means you spent years, maybe decades, fighting imaginary enemies, suffering over things that only existed in your head. The good news? You can stop now. The bad news? Your mind will resist. It will try to convince you that the problems are real, that you need it to survive, that without it, you'll be irresponsible, reckless, naive. That's the voice of the ego, the part of the mind that feeds on drama, problems, conflict, because without them, it has no reason to exist. But you are not the ego. You are the consciousness that observes the ego. And now, let's prove it. The exercise I'm going to teach you has 3 steps. 3 steps that Tolle considers the most powerful for accessing presence. And they work because they don't try to fight the mind. They use the mind's own nature to their advantage. First step, the impossible question. Sit comfortably, close your eyes if you want, or just look at a fixed point and ask your mind this question: what will my next thought be? And wait, in silence, observing what happens. For a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, no thought arises, because the mind gets confused. It doesn't know which thought to send, and in that confusion, silence. This silence is not empty. It's full of pure consciousness, full of presence. It's you without the mental narrative. It's you, real. Maintain this observation for 2 minutes. When thoughts arise, don't fight them. Simply observe. Ah, a thought appeared. And return to the question, what will be the next one? Second step, the present body. Now, keep your eyes closed and direct your attention to the inside of your body. Not to visualize the body, but to feel the vital energy flowing within it. Start with your hands. Can you feel a subtle sensation of life in your hands? A kind of tingling, a vitality. This is presence manifested physically. Expand this sensation to your arms, to your chest, to your whole body. It's as if you were a lamp being turned on from the inside out. Maintain this bodily awareness for 2 minutes. When the mind tries to distract you, return to the sensation of the living body, to the energy that pulsates within you. Third step, the space between sounds. Open your eyes or keep them closed. Now, listen. Listen to all the sounds around you. The street noise, the wind, the air conditioning, your own breath. But here's the secret. Don't focus on the sounds. Focus on the space between the sounds, on the silence that allows the sounds to exist, on the quietude that embraces all the noises. That space is you. It's the pure consciousness that witnesses everything, that allows everything to happen, but that is never disturbed by anything. Maintain this perception for 1 minute, and then return to your day, but carrying this awareness, as if it were an invisible perfume that you apply to your soul. These 5 minutes can change everything, but let me tell you what will really happen in the next few days, if you practice this. On the first day, you'll feel a strange calmness, almost suspicious, as if something were different but you can't identify what. It's subtle, as if the volume of the world had been lowered a few decibels. On the second day, something interesting happens. You'll notice that you can complete tasks more easily, without that feeling of fighting against yourself, as if the internal resistance has decreased. On the third day, you'll notice that situations that used to stress you out simply don't affect you the same way. That irritating email from the boss? You read it, process it, respond. Without internal drama, without creating 5 apocalyptic scenarios in your head, it's as if there were a layer of protective glass between you and the drama of life. On the 5th day, something deeper happens. You begin to notice the space between thoughts, small pauses that have always been there, but that you never noticed, like discovering that your house has secret rooms. In the first week, you'll start to perceive your thoughts as an observer. Instead of being inside the mental storm, you'll be observing the storm from a safe place, from a window on the 2nd floor, watching the rain below. In the 2nd week, the people around you begin to notice something different. You seem calmer, more present in conversations, less reactive. They can't explain what, but they feel that something has changed. In the 1st month, you realize that your problems haven't disappeared, but your relationship with them has changed completely. It's as if you've learned a new language, the language of consciousness instead of the language of drama. And here's the part that scares some people. You'll start to question whether many of your problems really exist, or if they are just old mental habits that you carry out of habit. Tolle calls this the end of unconscious identification with the mind. It's when you stop thinking that you are your thoughts and begin to realize that you have thoughts. The difference is revolutionary, because when you are your thoughts, any negative thought destroys you. When you have thoughts, you can choose which ones to pay attention to and which ones to let pass. It's like the difference between being a leaf carried by the wind and being the tree that observes the leaves flying. But there's a price. There always is. The price is that you'll have to abandon some mental vices, the vice of drama, the vice of worry, the vice of feeling like a victim of circumstances. And yes, they are vices, literally. When you worry, your brain releases cortisol and adrenaline, stress hormones that, in small doses, can be addictive, like a subtle drug that you don't even realize you're using. When you victimize yourself, you receive attention, compassion, a temporary feeling of importance. When you dramatize, you feel that your life has intensity, that you are not ordinary, that your problems are unique and important. These vices, however painful they may be, offer something that the ego loves: identity, a sense of who you are based on your problems. I am someone who has anxiety. I am someone who suffers from the past. I am someone who worries about the future. I am someone who can't relax. I am someone who thinks too much. These phrases become like identity badges, definitions of who you are, and abandoning them may seem like you're losing yourself. Tolle calls this the death of the ego. Not a literal death, but the death of the version of you that defines itself by its problems, by its history, by its traumas, by its limitations, and it can be scary. Because if you are not your problems, who are you? When you practice presence, these identities begin to dissolve, and for a few moments, you may feel empty, without knowing who you are. This is the most crucial moment, because it is in this emptiness that you discover who you really are. Beneath all the layers of thoughts, of all the manufactured identities, of all the characters you think you need to represent, you discover something that Tolle calls the being, pure consciousness, the presence that has always been there waiting for you to stop looking elsewhere. And this discovery changes everything, because when you know who you are at the deepest level, nothing else can really shake you. You can weather external storm, but the eye of the hurricane within you remains untouched. You might feel intense emotions, but you don't lose yourself in them. You might have disturbing thoughts, but you don't identify with them. It's like discovering you've always been the ocean, pretending to be a wave. And here's something that will surprise you. Modern science is starting to validate everything Tolle discovered through direct experience. Functional neuroimaging shows that when you meditate, which is basically what these exercises do, specific areas of the brain change. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for attention and awareness, becomes more active. The amygdala, the center of fear and anxiety, becomes calmer. Studies at Harvard University have found that just 8 weeks of meditative practice can literally reshape your brain, increasing gray matter in areas related to compassion and decreasing it in areas related to stress. It's as if you can reprogram your own neural hardware. Even more fascinating, research shows that states of presence activate what scientists call the default mode network. It's the part of the brain that's active when you're not focused on anything specific. And the more developed this network becomes, the more creative, intuitive, and peaceful you become. Tolle discovered this without knowing anything about neuroplasticity, without MRI machines, without laboratories, simply through pure observation of his own consciousness, which proves something incredible. You have direct access to the same mechanisms that science is discovering. You don't need equipment. You don't need a PhD. You just need to stop and look within. And the most beautiful part, this discovery is endless. Each moment you practice presence, you go deeper. You uncover layers of peace you didn't even know existed. Tolle describes this as waking up from the dream of thought. And when you wake up, you realize the entire world was dreaming along with you. All the people around you, lost in their minds, battling ghosts, suffering from stories they created themselves, and you become like a beacon, a presence that reminds others of who they truly are, but not through words, through your own state of being, because presence is contagious. When you are truly present, the people around you automatically relax without knowing why. It's as if your peace gives them permission to be peaceful too. You'll notice this first at home. Your children become calmer when you're present. Your partner opens up more. Arguments that once escalated rapidly simply dissolve, not because you're avoiding conflict, but because you're not fueling the fire with your own reactivity. At work, colleagues start seeking your opinion more often, not necessarily because you've become more intelligent, but because you seem to have a clearer perspective, less emotional, more centered. Tense meetings become less tense when you're in the room. Projects flow better. Not by magic, but because you've stopped creating unnecessary drama, stopped turning molehills into mountains. Even in traffic, life changes. That driver who cut you off? Instead of 15 minutes ruminating on how inconsiderate people are, you simply notice a thought of anger appeared and let it pass. It's as if you've developed emotional immunity. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you stopped identifying with every emotion that passes. And here's the real secret that Tolle discovered. The transformation of the world doesn't happen through more thoughts, more analysis, more strategies, more protests, more debates, more attempts to convince others to change. It happens through more consciousness, more presence, more people waking up from the dream of thought and discovering the reality that has always been here. You can be one of those people. Starting now, with 5 minutes, because every moment of presence you cultivate is a vote for a more conscious world. It's a small silent revolution. It's you choosing peace instead of drama, reality instead of illusion, love instead of fear, and maybe, just maybe, this is the most important contribution you can make to the world, not through what you do, but through who you are. When you stop feeding the mental storm, you discover you've always been the blue sky the storm was trying to hide. And that sky can never be stained, can never be destroyed, can never be lost because it is you, the real you, the you that existed before thoughts began, and that will continue to exist when they stop. Now you know the secret. The question is, will you use it? But before you leave, let me tell you about the last paradox Tolle discovered, the paradox that could change everything for you. For years, he sought enlightenment, peace, consciousness, like most of us do. Reading books, taking courses, trying techniques, traveling to sacred places, seeking masters. And the more he searched, the further away peace seemed to be. Until that night in London, when he stopped searching, he found it. Or rather, he discovered he had never lost it. The peace you seek is nowhere. It's not on a mountaintop retreat. It's not in a mindfulness course. It's not in 5 years of therapy. It's not in the future when you solve all your problems. It's here, now, beneath all the thoughts that tell you it's not. It's like looking for glasses that are on your head. The more you search, the more desperate you become, until someone points out that they've been there all along. You don't need to become conscious. You are consciousness. You don't need to find peace. You are the peace that thoughts are hiding. You don't need to stop thinking. You need to remember that there's someone observing the thoughts, and that someone has never been disturbed, not for a second. Even now, as you listen to this, there's a part of you that is completely calm, completely present, completely at peace. the part that's observing your reactions to these words, the part that's aware of being aware, that part is you, the real you, the you that existed before you learned your name. And that will continue to exist after you forget everything you believe you know about yourself. Tolle's 5 minutes don't give you something new. They remove what was hiding what was already there, because life is too short to be lived in a mental storm when the blue sky is always available, not in a week, not when you solve all your problems, not when you find the perfect partner or the ideal job. Now, Eckhart Tolle offers you 5 minutes to discover who you truly are. Beneath everything you think you are, there's a doorway, a hidden passage in waiting to be discovered. It's always been open, always been there, a gateway to something more, something deeper. You just need to step through, to walk across that threshold. It might feel daunting, even terrifying, like stepping into the unknown. But the other side, well, the other side holds the promise of peace, of profound understanding, of a stillness that transcends the usual storms of life. This is the invitation, the quiet whisper calling you home, a home not of bricks and mortar, but a home within, a sanctuary of your own being, a space beyond the relentless chatter of the mind. To find this place, this sanctuary, you don't need to scale a mountain. No need for a remote Himalayan retreat or a solitary cabin in the woods. It is within reach, in the busy streets of London, on a park bench in Central Park, or amidst the chaos of your daily life. Eckhart Tolle found this doorway, not in some exotic location, but amidst the hurricane of his own inner turmoil. He discovered the eye of the hurricane, a point of stillness, a place of profound presence, a space where the runaway train of his mind finally came to a halt, where the 50 browser tabs of his thoughts closed themselves. This is a discovery available to everyone. It's not reserved for monks or gurus or those who have mastered ancient techniques. It is a fundamental aspect of human existence, an innate potential waiting to be awakened. This passage, this door, it leads you to a place beyond the ego, beyond the relentless negativity bias that whispers doubts and fears into your consciousness. It's a journey into the heart of yourself, a discovery of the inherent peace that resides within, a silence that speaks volumes. Dare to step through.